You're here, which means that you've found Spirit Crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Crumbs. I am your host, 𝗕𝗏𝗪. I am an intuitive reader and energy healer. Today, I just recorded an episode on some spirit crumbs that have led me to feel more confident in my direction, in my healing, and my other spiritual work. And I wanted to talk a bit about how to choose a healer or an intuitive person to work with, because I know for me, I was lucky enough that I was able to attend psychic expos when I was young, and I was taught to walk around and feel the energy of the person I felt drawn to or who I intuitively knew I was meant to work with. But that's obviously not always an option for us. And over time, I've had different periods where I was drawn more or less to others for information and intuitive knowledge. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my philosophy on choosing someone and things to consider if you are just starting out on your journey. The thing that I want to start with, I think, is the most important part of receiving other healing or intuitive readings, which is knowing why you want that support in the first place. Because I think sometimes we put too much power in other people, in our healing and in our intuitive messages and insights. So for me, when I started going to psychics, I did start to get my own decks of cards, and I found what would happen is often when I would go, I would end up just receiving similar messages to what I already got for myself, but with a bit more insight or with more of an objective eye. Sometimes I would have gotten some cards and be like, oh, I don't know if that's really what that means. And then when another person would pick the same card, that would be like a message to me like, oh no, you were trying to bypass that, but that's actually something you need to address. Or also just feeling good, and it would also build up my own confidence, being like, okay, yes, that is mirroring what I was able to get for myself. So I am tapping into those messages. I am reading that right myself. I also went through a period when it was a difficult time for me in my early 20s, and I found this one healer. She was a card reader, and she was so accurate. And I always felt like she could just see right inside my brain, and she just knew my soul. And I saw her in person whenever I could, which was at least once a year, probably for a couple of years. And in between, I would call her for phone readings. And then at one point, I tried to sign up for another reading, for a phone reading. And I think it had only been a couple months since the previous one. And it just the system wasn't working. I couldn't get in. And I realized it was probably because I was giving my power away, and that I really didn't need to hear any more from her because I already knew what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to focus on, and I was getting messages myself. And I think it was at a point where I needed to start trusting myself. And so I just want you to remember that when you're looking for this guidance, it's good to get that guidance. I do need to get it from other people sometimes because we can't really be fully objective with ourselves, because the outcome is always at the back of our mind whenever we're getting these messages. And so I've been trying to focus less on outcomes and more on the process, which has been very helpful for me, even reading for myself. But I think there's also something great about doing that work for yourself and then going to someone else to get the messages they're able to pass along to you. And then when that matches up with what you already know, what you've already been receiving yourself, it's still an empowering way to look at it, by having someone else validate what you already know. But when you don't really tune into yourself at all, and you don't really think about like what you're able to do for yourself, then you're putting all of the power in the other person. And it's good to still be objective and still be just cognizant of the fact that it's not 100% for certain anything you receive for reading or anything that comes through for yourself in cards. Obviously, we all have free will, and things can change on a moment-to-moment basis based on small decisions that we don't realize have a lot of power. But I feel like if you're receiving your own messages and the same one from others, that's a pretty good indicator of what energy you're in at that time. But like I said, when there were periods that I was putting all of my power in what somebody else was going to tell me, instead of realizing I already know that within myself, that wasn't really the healthiest way to reach out for intuitive support. And I just think that it's important to really think about why you want that information, or why you're looking for that outside validation. And so if you're looking for the support because you just are like all over the place and you need some clarity, that's a great point to reach out for help. But if you're trying to force something that isn't working and you just want to hear someone else tell you that you're right, I think that that's a pretty clear indicator that you already know what you should be doing, or you already know that that's not working out. So just trying to see like what your own intention is behind getting the reading, because as we know, intention is such an important part of anything that we do. And so I've started asking myself that, even though I do a partner practice reading almost every week in the initiation circle, I still ask myself when I'm going into those readings, like, what is my intention for this? What do I feel would be empowering for me in this moment to hear, as opposed to just, I wonder if they can tell me what's happening next. And I think that's why I very much kind of refuse to use the term psychic, even though anything we do when we're connecting to another person and their soul and like their energy, it's psychic if it's a one-to-one thing, if you're connecting to that person and what's in their energy. But I think that when people hear psychic reading, they think fortune teller. And for me, that's just not been my experience for the messages I receive. Yes, sometimes I can feel what's coming up in their energy, but there's also the sense that there's still free will, that it's not for sure, that it's just something I'm picking up on. And most of the time, it's about what they need to do for healing. It's not so much like you're going to meet this particular person. I have had a few readings where I'm like, I'm really picking up this particular energy, but it's still up to that person to decide what they're going to do with that information, right? And I think that's why you need to have an intention going into a reading, because you need to know, regardless of what the information is, you need to know that your real indicator of what your next action should be will be how you feel intuitively about the information. And so even after you have a reading and maybe you've taken notes or you get to listen back to it, really tune into how you feel at different points, because there's one side of you that, you know, might just be putting out so strongly that you want to hear a certain thing, that anything that resembles that, you're going to be like wishful thinking and you're only going to take in that part of the information. Whereas sometimes if there's something you don't want to hear, you'll try to find a way to like justify that maybe it's not what it seems. And that might be the part that you're like, well, you can't believe everything I hear. And I think it's just important to really be clear on what you want to get. And again, if you're just feeling lost and you just feel like you need some clarity, that is a great time to still reach out. But there's a part of you that needs to reflect on the information afterwards and just say, okay, what part really resonated with me and why do I feel called to this particular piece of information? Because again, it's your life, it's free will, and it's so helpful to have someone intuitive to pick up on things for you that you may not be seeing. So yes, it can provide incredible clarity. Some of the best readings I've ever had have been the ones that have really made something clear to me that I was trying not to see, or that was just getting jumbled up in everything else I had going on. So I'm not saying it's not helpful. Obviously, I wouldn't do this work if I didn't think it was helpful and beneficial for people on their journey, but just to be aware that you also can do things for yourself. You can sit in meditation and see what comes up for you. You can pull a few cards of your own and try to feel for a while. Maybe do it for a few days before a reading and see what's coming up for you and what feels true for you first. But once you've decided, like, yes, I need to reach out for some support, the things you can start to do are either, if they're on social media, you can go onto their Instagram or Facebook or however you're connecting and really feel into the energy and feel what you feel in your heart or in your third eye or your crown chakra. If you feel tingles, if you feel really expansive and you feel really open towards the person, and you maybe hopefully can hear their voice or see their face, and if you feel connected to them and what they have to say or how they share or just the aesthetic that they have, if all those things are really resonating with you, then it can be helpful to either look at the link in their bio or at least reach out to them, find out what kind of work they're doing if it's not clear to you, and see if you can connect that way by seeing the person and feeling drawn to them. For me, that's often what feels best for me. If I'm not really sure who to go with, I will check out a few different people. And like I said, it was so much easier when I was in person and could walk from booth to booth and feel my energy change. But I think the most important thing in these cases is to notice if you feel like you're constricting or like closing up towards someone, because that's a very clear indicator that maybe they just aren't the right person for you to connect with. And I'm not saying that they're not a good reader or there's anything wrong. It's just that there's some people that we connect to more than others. And then something that I learned from Squamish medium 𝗦𝗡 in terms of, let's say, mediumship, is that certain people in spirit can only communicate through certain mediums or certain intuitive people, because we all are only able to pass on information through our own lens. So if someone's trying to communicate through a particular medium and they have no similar life references, nothing that they're able to have in common, it can be sometimes more challenging for some mediums to connect with certain spirits. And so keeping in mind that if you're feeling closed off towards someone, it could just be that they are not able to interpret the messages you're meant to get at that time. Maybe you'll feel connected to them for something else, but maybe at that particular moment, they're just not the right person for you. Something else I want to mention is that you can ask questions. I always put it out there for people to DM me if they have any questions. And I never want someone to feel like they're going to be obligated to sign up just because they asked a question. I genuinely just want to help you find what works for you. So it may not be me that is able to help you, but I know lots of other people who do different types of healing, different types of readings. That's why it's so important for me to have a community of people, so that when I can't support a client that comes through, at least I have someone I can refer them to. And sometimes you need to just let the information settle in and integrate. Sometimes you will have questions because you're just trying to figure out what works for you. And that's totally fine. There's no pressure. By asking a question, you're just getting more information that helps you intuitively decide what's meant for you. So never hesitate if someone is interesting to you and there's just something you want to clarify before you book a session. Ask the question, because if worse comes to worse, if the person doesn't respond very well, then you'll be saving yourself from connecting with someone that you probably weren't meant to connect with in the first place. Or if they're not able to help you in that way, you'll find out before you get to the session. And so you're better off to ask the question up front. It's like any service. It's better to ask up front than to get it all the way home and then realize it's not what you wanted, right? So I just wanted to put that out there as well, that I am more than happy to ask questions, even if it's just a general question about like, what is Reiki, or what is oracle card reading, or what is mediumship? I don't do mediumship professionally, but I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. So if you have any questions about developing or different spiritual services that people offer that you're just curious about and you're not really comfortable reaching out to them and you feel like you can reach out to me, by all means, please do. I think this information should be available for everyone. And I'm hoping to have people in different modalities talk a little bit more in some interviews to try and clarify some of that for you as well. And then keeping in mind what type of reading you're looking for. Are you looking to connect to someone in spirit? Then a medium is probably your best way to go, obviously. And then if you're looking for something just about your life and you're looking for more just what's happening for you, then a soul or psychic reading is probably better. And then there are some people who are able to do both. So if you're really just not sure or you're open to either one, that opens it up a little bit more to those people who are able to provide both types of readings. And then making sure that the offerings they have resonate with you too. If it's, you do have to look at your own price range and your budget too. If you're not able to connect with someone on a level of what your resources are versus what they're asking, then that just maybe means that you're meant to go to someone else. And something that I just want to point out is it's like art or anything else where someone is determining, even just anyone who owns their own business, if someone has determined their own prices, that's what their energetic worth is at. And so asking them to provide it for less is not really a great energetic if you're looking to get a spiritual reading or a spiritual session. I would suggest maybe putting it out there to the universe that you'd like to connect with them and then following them on any social media they're on. And maybe at some point they'll be doing free readings or offer discounts or some way where you can connect with them. But it probably just means also that at that time, there's somebody else that you're really more suited to connect with who's just as talented and is just offering something more in your price range. And then if you're looking for more just guidance on what to do next, and you just really want to be able to talk about what's going on with you and share a little bit more and see what kind of guidance comes up, that's where coaching can come in really handy. And you can still do that with someone who does like oracle card readings or something to see what comes up too. But it depends on how much you want to be contributing. Because if somebody's pulling cards for you, it's mostly going to be them sharing information and you just validating yes or no, if that resonates, and maybe clarifying something here and there. But if you feel like you want the space to talk about what's going on and explain it and have someone who's already been on the path for a while to talk it out with you, that's where coaching can come in handy. And the same thing goes there. It's also really common for coaches to have like a free discovery call or consultation call so that you can find out if they're able to be the right person to support you, and you can feel from the conversation and just how that flows if that's the right fit for you. Because coaching is often a little bit of a higher price point because the person will probably do some planning before you talk, or they'll be using a lot of different tools in order to help you. Because like I use oracle cards sometimes, I will talk about books that I've read. I also take a lot of my own experiences and explain them. So there's just a lot more going into the session for coaching that the person has to kind of bring in. I get a lot of intuitive messages as well. And a lot of coaches work that way too, especially in the spiritual world. And then, of course, like I was just talking about, there's oracle card or tarot card readings. Tarot, I find, is more setting out like specific things that are happening, patterns, trends. They do tend to have a little bit more of an indication of the order of things happening or other people and influences on the situation. And tarot is just a more traditional form, so the cards have more predictable meanings. Depending, like across all decks, they'll have some sort of a connection to the original meaning for each card. And then oracle cards, I really enjoy using because I feel like it's just more open for me. I just receive more messages when I'm doing oracle cards. So a lot of people who do oracle card readings are just very intuitive and just picking up on what's in your energy at that time. And so it's not always prescriptive. It's often more just empowering and hitting on the things that you need to know to make your own decisions. They're not usually predicting exactly what's going to happen. Like I said, I have gotten some information through oracle cards that is a little bit more predictive in nature, but it's still more so in the context of what's going on in general and what skills you already have in order to move forward. But every reader is different. And again, just getting a sense of what they do and seeing if they post spreads or if they've done anything on Instagram or if they've done lives or, IGTV videos, really just feeling out what feels connected to you at the time and just figuring out what you need. Again, going back to that intention. What do you need right now? And what kind of reading is going to bring you that? And then there's energy healing, which is if you're just feeling energetically like you're feeling drained, or you feel like you want to feel more confident and you already know what you want to do, you just kind of need that boost to do it. Or if you're really grieving and you don't want to talk about things, you just really want that energetic support. I feel like that's when I gravitate towards energy healing, is when I just want my emotions and the different areas of life to be a little bit more balanced and aligned. I find that I get messages after for myself, or signs and synchronicities and spirit crumbs show up when I get energy healing, because it's kind of like the energy pushes you towards whatever it is you're meant to be doing. But it can be really great for even just physical things. Like if you're just having a recurring pain or an illness or something that is just really not going away, and you just want some support that's more holistic, as opposed to like maybe your doctor is taking a long time with tests and stuff, and you just want something in the meantime to support you, then that can be really helpful. Today, the energy healing session I did was for someone who was experiencing a migraine and they had a sick child, and that was just where I was able to support. And then other times people, you may be looking for, like when I do my energetic upgrade sessions, a lot of times that's for people who just really want a boost to move forward. Like they're ready to go and they just need that boost to see what areas are able to be supported at that time. So sometimes I'll feel really like the solar plexus, like the confidence needs a boost, and that's where the energy will go. Sometimes it's the throat chakra. People need to speak up more, and that gets a boost. And I'm using crystals and distance Reiki and some symbols that I just kind of draw out at the time. There's affirmations that I just say, like it's a combination. So you have to look at what type of healing people are doing. If you want in-person healing, some people are doing in-person Reiki or other healing types, pranic healing, etc. So if you need that, if you really want that like physical connection, that might be the way to go. That's another thing to consider with any type of reading is, do you want something in person? Are you looking more for someone local, or are you open to doing it over Zoom or doing it remotely? That's another thing to consider. But just keeping in mind that when you're doing healing, like energy healing specifically, remembering also to look back at the fact that you are the one choosing to seek this out. So you're healing yourself. You're just finding the right tool, right? You're just finding the right channel for the energy for you. And so you're still going to want to check out and see how you feel about each person. And that's why I offer group sessions weekly, because I figure if people are really not sure and they don't want to make the full investment yet, it's a good way for them to try it out. And you're still going to receive a healing session. It just won't be tailored to exactly maybe what's going on for you, but it's always an intuitive energy. The energy will give you what you need at that time because you're the one reaching out. So it's your intention again that is going to direct the session. I am only following where I'm being guided. So in a group session, I'm probably going to be drawn to what most people are dealing with. So if there's something that everyone has in common, that's probably where I'm going to be focused. Whereas for an individual session, whatever that person is needing the most is where the energy is going to go. And it'll be more directed, and they're longer sessions. It'll be more time for me to work through those things. So that is just kind of all of the things that I consider when I'm looking at getting healing. And that's why I mentioned in my previous episode, I created a blend session, the soul blend sessions, where you're able to choose a little bit of everything. So coaching, energy healing, and intuitive oracle card reading, and figure out what combination you want. And it's a 90-minute session. So it's lots of time. You're able to go through everything. If you want to talk things out a little bit, also get some intuitive messages, and then have some energy healing to kind of address whatever's going on with you. It's a really great way in a short amount of time, instead of having to book 3 separate sessions. If you have a lot of things you want to work through, it's just one session where you're able to address all of the different, you can address the same issue in like a few different ways to try and move that energy more, and also help yourself plan going forward. I really want people to connect with the people that you feel called to. So keeping in mind, again, that anything you do on your spiritual path, keeping in mind that you have it within you, right? Like you can go within. That's why meditation is talked about so much, because we do have the answers within. And asking for signs, which I talked about a bunch of my spirit crumbs in the previous episode, that's a way where you can, that's where spirit crumbs, that's why, see, this is why I'm coming back to spirit crumbs again, back to the core of this podcast, that when you ask for the help, your guides, angels, ancestors, whoever you connect with, they will make sure that you get where you're going, because we're all meant to fulfill whatever it is that speaks to us and whatever our desires are. So don't forget to trust yourself just as much as you trust other people. And it's great to reach out for support. We all need community. We all need a little bit of help here and there, but just remembering that because you're the one choosing it, you're the one healing yourself. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.